G'day, I'm going to talk to you about a pretty powerful concept that's been really good in my life, and that concept is the law of assumption, or the concept of understanding who you are, and through the concept of assumption, that the assumptions we hold about ourselves determines our concept of ourselves. So I'm going to unpack that a little bit more by using a personal example that is pretty good. So hopefully, I was on the couch just watching a YouTube video, and I heard my 3-year-old son. I didn't hear him in the process of doing it, but he ended up grabbing a glass from the cupboard and putting it on the table, and then he got himself some milk. It was a 3-litre jug of carton of milk, and he ended up pouring himself a glass of milk. But the thing is that he doesn't know how to stop, so he ended up pouring a full 3 litres of milk all over the table and then all over onto the floor. And then I ended up hearing all these noises. I heard the dog licking it up, and then I heard him scuffling around. So then what is that noise? And so then I went into the kitchen, and I was like, oh my goodness, he's made a massive mess. And then I was like, oh, okay, so what? Then I was like, I reacted within myself to the emotion of anger, and then I was like, okay, I'm not going to get angry at this situation, because I know that's going to make it far more worse, because I noticed that feeling come up within myself, and then I was able to catch it before I acted on it. And then I was like, okay, what is actually going on here? Why? It's not actually that big of a deal. What is going on here? And then I realized, it's my concept of myself in the external circumstances that I'm actually reacting to. In other words, most of the time when we notice ourselves reacting in anxiety or in fear or whatever the emotional reaction is, we're not actually reacting to the situation, to the circumstance. We're reacting to our concept of ourselves in the circumstance. It's a very big difference. In other words, our concept of ourselves is revealed in the circumstances based on how we think about ourselves. So in that circumstance, the reason why I noticed that this is what's going on, I noticed within myself anger, and then I realized, okay, so I'm reacting with anger. I'm not actually reacting to my son Zach, or to the milk, or the mess, or anything like that, because I looked at it objectively, just looked at it, and I was like, everything is what it is. It just is. There's milk on the floor, there's milk on the table, Zach's over there, dog's over there, there's no danger, there's actually nothing in the circumstance that's actually dangerous or should determine this high level of reaction. So I realized my emotional reaction is inappropriate to the situation. That was the first realization that I had, and I was like, okay, so there's something more going on here. I'm not actually reacting to what's actually happening, because that shouldn't cause a big reaction within yourself. It's an overreaction that's happening within me. So what's actually going on here? So then I started to realize, I was just standing there, just processing this within myself for the next 30 seconds before I actually took action. So, this stuff was going on within me, and then I was like, okay, what's going on? So if I wasn't angry, what would I feel instead? And I would realize, okay, I'm feeling hurt. Okay, so why am I feeling hurt? So then I was like, okay, if I was to take action, what would I need to do? I'd need to clean it up. And then I realized, okay, so if I go to clean it up, then I'm going to have to get some paper towels, get this resource, get that, get the mop, although the dog was doing a pretty good job of the mop, which was quite handy. And then grab that, and then I started to overthink it, and then I was like, overthinking the process, just started to realize, oh my gosh, I'm making it such a big deal of like, I'm overreacting, I'm overthinking it, as in I'm thinking within myself, I have to grab this, and I don't even know where the paper towels they might not be where they should be because my wife's moved them, and then she's done this, and then I started to go into that blame, and I was like, what on earth am I was being aware and watching my thoughts within myself about the situation, and then I was realizing I started to blame, and I was like, wait, what? Why am I blaming other people? Like, it's just a simple thing. Just clean it up. It seems simple, but then I started to feel overwhelmed with my own negative thinking, and then I was like, okay, so I'm starting to overanalyze this whole situation, and then I was like, oh, so then there's an assumption that I've made about myself that I'm thinking from. In other words, I'm not able to just fix up the situation because I'm acting from an assumption that I have about myself. So I was like, okay, so I need to find that, and then I started to watch my thinking even more, and then I realized, okay, so I asked myself the question, who am I being? Who's the person that's creating all these thinking? What kind of a person do you need to be to have these kinds of thoughts? And as I was like thinking about the process of cleaning it up, doing it, I was like, I got stuck on those words, doing, cleaning, and then I was like, doing, cleaning, and then I realized, that's the assumption. It just came to me. I'm unable. That's what the assumption was about myself. So I was believing myself to be someone who's unable or incapable. And I'm like, okay, this is strange because there's many other situations where I'm able to just take the action and just clean things up, and it's no big deal. So why is it coming up in this situation? Why do I believe myself to be unable? Why am I assuming myself as being unable? And then I realized that that's because I wasn't fully clear on the process. So in the past, I realized when I'm not fully clear about how to do something, I assume myself to be unable. So whenever things don't just pop into my mind straight away, like, oh, the paper towels are there, that's there, and when I can see the whole process just clearly, when I don't have the clarity, then I assume myself as not being able. I'm unable when I'm not able to have the clarity. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what's going on within myself. So then I realized all of that stuff, and then I was just able to just use my imagination just to think through the situation and just grab that, and just ended up mopping it up, even though the feeling was still a bit uncomfortable, but it wasn't unbearable, because the unbearable feeling, you could say, was powerlessness of being able to do something about the situation, because I wasn't seeing the situation as it was. I was seeing it as how I was. And how many times do we judge other people for not being able to do a simple task that seems so simple? It's because they're actually being held back, not objectively, because you look at the situation objectively, like, oh, you just need to do that. It's pretty simple, right? Just looks pretty obvious, pretty simple, but we fail to understand that there's a subjective reality that's going on within someone, and we don't actually account for that fact that they are not seeing the situation objectively, they're seeing it subjectively. They're seeing it according to their own assumptions and how they think about themselves, and that's what's stumping them up, that's what's delaying them or procrastinating, and all of this stuff that's on the outside are just symptoms of your concept of yourself. So the main takeaway is your assumption about yourself is your concept of yourself. So your concept of yourself is what you assume yourself to be. So in that case, in that situation, it was, I'm unable. That was my assumption that I believed about myself, and I was just automatically acting from and thinking from it. And that's also a law of being. The law of being is that you can't see who you are being because you're being it. You're looking as yourself, from yourself. In other words, it's like we don't really notice who we are being while we're being it, because it's like trying to look at your own eyes. You can't turn your eyes inward and see the source you can't see the source that you're looking from. You can't see the source that's seeing everything around yourself, because you're looking from it as it. So that's why we've got to be able to recognize our concept of ourselves in our external circumstances and realize we're not actually reacting to the situation. We're reacting to our concept of ourselves in the situation, because we don't see the situation as it is, we see it as we are. We don't see people as they are, we see people as we are. So if I was to react in anger and to actually take action on that anger, it could affect my son's concept of himself. He could form an assumption about himself from my own reaction in anger towards him. If I didn't catch it within myself, then he can make an assumption about himself. Maybe messes are dangerous, making a mess is not safe, or because he might have associated the feeling of not feeling safe to making a mess, and then he has that assumption about himself that comes up as a result of situations. So that's the emotional association. We associate an emotion to a situation through the assumption or the meaning we give a circumstantial situation. So instead of giving meaning to the situation, which then attaches emotion to it, and then we no longer see the situation as it is, we see it as how we are perceiving it according to how we see ourselves. There's a lot in that, but yeah, I hope that helps, and